Welcome back to Hashtag Single with Jeanette Bonner. I am not a relationship expert or sex therapist. I'm just a regular New York City woman navigating the world as a single, independent feminist. Hashtag Single is about having honest conversations with other singles in today's device-obsessed culture. So I hope you'll join me on this interesting, challenging, and complex journey as we navigate the ins and outs of singledom. Welcome back, beautiful singles, to Hashtag Single. Jeanette here. Welcome to your second episode of 2022. Listen, while this episode would normally be featuring a badass single lady guest and her delightful sidekick known as the voice of the patriarchy, if you have been following along, I have been struggling a little bit to get some single dudes to come onto the podcast and represent. So while I do have some killer lady guests that are ready to come onto the podcast any moment and chat it out with me, I do want to stay true to the original intention of the podcast, which was to share the conversation across the aisle, if you will, and always get two sides of the topic at hand. So until some strong single men show up, I've decided to shake things up with something new and different for 2022. Which I'm sure we could all use, feeling like it has just been the last 2 years on repeat here. As I'm sure you're aware, there are a ton of podcasts talking about dating and relationships. And rather than competing for space, because there is space for everyone, we do not subscribe to scarcity mindset because we're badass empowered women who get shit done. I thought that it would be cool to invite some other people, other podcast hosts onto Hashtag Single to find out what their hot topics are, what inspires them, and see if we can learn something from one another. And with that, it is my pure delight to introduce you to Lily Womble, who is a dating coach, speaker, former matchmaker, but most importantly, CEO and founder of Date Brazen, which is a professional coaching company and community for singles looking to date. In February 2020, Lily started the Date Brazen podcast in conjunction with her coaching services. And the podcast is meant as a space where Lily brings weekly strategies and coaching to those looking for a clearer path to, quote unquote, the best relationship of their life. Lily, welcome to the podcast.
Hello. So glad to be here. I love the sharing of the mic. It's so beautiful.
Thank you. I'm so glad to connect virtually. Listen, that is I'm sorry to quote you on your motto. The best relationship of my life, not for nothing. As far as Hashtag Single goes, we know that the best relationship of our lives is with ourselves.
Yeah.
So, I love the idea of looking for the quote unquote best relationship of their life and coaching towards that goal. Mm-hmm. But, like I said, maybe the second best relationship of your life.
Well, I think that all of the tools that make you a better friend to yourself and make you feel more full of agency, which you are, and make you feel more self-trust filled, also lead to more deeply fulfilling romantic relationships as well. So I think the work, it's a both and, right? Like the work on yourself directly relates to the type of friendships you have, the type of relationships you have with your family, and the type of romance that you can be in.
100%. Oh my God. I knew this episode was going to be phenomenal because you and I are like in the same wavelength. Lily's podcast, guys, if you're not familiar with it, if you're not familiar with Date Brazen, she specifically talks about, in your intro, you always talk about how you're feminist leading in your approach to dating and in your strategies behind dating, leading with this idea. And I think Hashtag Single is very much in the same page, like me first. And when we work and we solidify the personal self first, we are then able to show up stronger for other people.
Yeah, absolutely. Being an intersectional feminist is at the core of every single value that we have at Date Brazen, every single coaching cohort that we begin, because the work gets to be deeper when we create a safe and brave space for women to show up as their full selves, and when those women are affirming of other women's full selves. And so I think that the dating world specifically, like when I was a matchmaker, it is full of such patriarchal, conventional, reductive bullshit. Like, Are you sure you can trust what you want? Are you sure you're not being too picky? Why don't you just play the numbers game? Like, why don't you just download another app? Why don't you just fill in the blank? Which that advice, like, it was given to me by people who love me, but what they didn't know was that advice at its core is telling people, women specifically, like, exhaust yourself, don't trust yourself. You don't know what you really want. Why don't you just settle so that you can be more valuable in the eyes of society? And so being from the Deep South, I fully reject that narrative. And so I created Date Brazen to be a safe haven for women to show up authentically, fully, and learn how to attract more from that place.
I love that. I obviously everything about that, like you say often in your podcast, we come from a scarcity mindset. It is a patriarchal structure of like, we don't know your value unless you are tied to a relationship or a partnership. And you are like trying to reject that and also trying to find ourselves and our freedom in this, this really sort of like post-feminist, really intense, overwhelming space of online dating. So I appreciate what you're for and everything you say, very much in line with what we talk about. I love that you're also a dating coach because I feel like I'm getting a double whammy here on the podcast. This is fantastic. But let's start with your podcast. So talk to me about your journey to the podcast. You already had Date Brazen started. You had a successful coaching company. What made you decide to start a podcast right before the pandemic?
Well, I was encouraged by like a coach of mine to put my ideas out there more. And I thought it was one of those things where I thought I was already. I was like, I email people once a week. I show up on Instagram. Why do I need to start a podcast? Everybody fucking has a podcast. I'm like, yes. I don't want to start about I don't want to, whatever. What I didn't realize is that I forgot how much I love talking on mic. My mom is a professional voiceover talent. And so from the age of 5, I know, crazy. So from the age of 5, I was in front of a microphone. Like she got me in the booth and like I had professional voiceover gigs when I was 5.
Oh my God.
So I had forgotten that the mic is, and I'm a performer. I originally moved to New York City to pursue musical theater. And then as a musical theater performer struggling in so many lines at like 4 a.m., I found a job as a matchmaker at a national firm. And that's when I pivoted to working in the dating space. So I had I was looking for ways to bring my authentic love of performing to my business. And the podcast, when I got in front of the mic, I was like, oh, this feels like home.
It's my jam.
Yes, yes, I love it because I also love that I've been able to cultivate a space where I can just be super vulnerable and real and share my many hot takes on mic. And my clients and their friends and then people that I don't even know or I'm not even connected to get to enjoy and dip their toe in and agree with me, disagree with me, like noodle on some new ideas with me. Because ultimately what I really want to do is disrupt the way that people, specifically women, disrupt the way that they think dating has to be, which is like this conventional narrative that dating has to suck. Because I actually know and believe down to my core that dating, it's a microcosm of every hope, joy, dream, fear, insecurity, desire that we have as humans. And as such, the way that we date deeply matters to our overall well-being. And so if you think about dating as an extension of your well-being, if you're feeling like it's sucking, if you believe that dating has to suck, then you're negating your power to change your circumstances or change your approach, change your orientation to the dating world so that it feels like an act of self-care, like an act of future self-care, taking care of the future you who wants to create this big, beautiful life.
That's so powerful. First of all, I just want to commend and compliment you on the fact that not only do you publish once a week, you have 92 episodes right now, but that you deliver each episode just by yourself, meaning you're not interviewing anyone. I mean, occasionally, but very few people can do that and do that well. I certainly couldn't just get on here and talk clearly and coherently for 30 minutes straight by myself. I'm sure it would just sound like the ramblings of a mad woman, but you do it so eloquently. And I really, it was so, this is corny, but it was really comforting and relaxing to listen to you. Like it really did feel like you're like, oh, this woman understands why dating is such a mind fuck.
Yeah.
And this makes me feel like it's going to be okay.
Oh, Jeanette, thank you so much for saying that. That really does mean a lot. And I still, I'm a recovering perfectionist. all the way. And so if I told you that this process of like putting out this podcast weekly was like easy for me, I would be lying, because in the beginning I was working through, is this good enough? Is this good enough? And now I've gotten to the point where progress is better than perfection. Yes. And a lot of, if you go into the archives of this podcast, there are 10-minute episodes of me just being like, hey, wanted to check in.
Which is so great.
One tiny thought and I'm out,
Yes. No, but I was surprised a little bit. I thought maybe I like messed it up. I was like, wow, this is only like 10 minutes long. But I love that you're just like, because yes, like I'm an over preparer as well. I love that you have a theater background, as do I, as do a lot of my guests.
Yeah.
It's sort of, I think like they're very tangential and the worlds overlap. But yes, done is better than perfect is one of my favorite mantras from my coach. And I think, well, we're executing a show, right? So the producer in me, the performer in you has that instinct of like, oh, well, if I'm going to present, I don't want it to look sloppy. I don't want it to look bad. I don't want it to look unprofessional when like, gosh, it's like, at the end of the day, one of my favorite Pilates teachers after every class, he would say, "It's just gym class, you guys."
It's not that deep. In the words of Cody Rigsby, it's not that deep, boo.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
For sure.
Like, it's just a podcast. It's just people fucking talking.
And I think about when I was pursuing musical theater, and look, I still have dreams. I still have big old dreams of like Brazen becomes big enough to where I can be like, I'm gonna be like Colleen Ballinger, like going into waitress. I'm like, it could happen. It could happen in 10 years where I get to just do the damn thing.
You're a
because
personality.
Of this.
Yes.
Right. Oh my God. Because my ultimate dream for Date Brazen is for the book. I've written a book proposal. We're shopping it around, like for the and then I hope that I want that, and it will become like, I want to show like Queer Eye, but for dating, like the Date Brazen show, so that we can illuminate these steps that people can take to build a dating life on their own terms that leads to extraordinary within your own self, within your own body, for yourself, and attracting extraordinary. So anyway, all the plans are in the works. But one of the things that I say all the time is, what is meant for you will not pass you by, right? And that statement was so powerful for me and changed my life. And I found it in a dance class, because I'm not a dancer. I was trying to be in musical theater. I couldn't do a pirouette. Like I couldn't do a single. And I signed up for this dance class called Fearless Movers or something. And it was like a weekly thing, and you went in, and it was really made things more approachable. But these teachers who were on Broadway, teaching us, saying like, what is meant for you will not pass you by, and not really being able to fully own that yet, not being able to really fully believe that yet. But now, 5 years later, I can look back and say, wow, like that is so dang true. That thing that was on a mirror in a dance class that I took now is guiding me to build this business, and now gets to be the advice that I give women in their dating journeys who feel so hopeless. And what I love about this statement, what is meant for you will not pass you by, is that you don't have to believe it right now for it still to be true. And so like, if that feels, because sometimes it can feel heavy to try to believe that what is meant for you will not pass you by.
Or like a platitude almost.
Right.
Kind of like it gets better sometimes just feels like a Band-Aid instead of something that you can absorb and feel in your soul.
Well, I think that it's not where the advice stops, by the way. It's just like a sort of what I believe to be a blanket truth that we're laying that if we were at a campfire, if I had a quilt, the quilt would be what is meant for you will not pass you by. Let's sit down and do the work together.
Ooh, I love that visual. That's beautiful.
And I'll believe it for you until you can believe it for yourself. Like I will happily hold this belief for you until it feels accessible to you.
See, that's what I was talking about, like listening. When you say things like that, like I just feel like I'm so, like you're reaching across the airwaves, it's just like a nice virtual hug, and you're like, girl, it's shitty now, but I got you. It's going to be okay.
There's a vision. It's one of the best gifts of this work is
nice.
I get to lay out this big, bold vision, and then women get to live into whatever their version of that vision is for themselves,
That's beautiful. What were you hoping to achieve when you first started, and has that changed at all?
The podcast or beep borp. I feel like I started out thinking that I wanted to change the dating industry.
Ooh, okay.
And that was sort of my big, deep why at one point. And then I realized that I was much less interested in changing the dating industry. Like Bumble and Tinder and Match are going to do their thing. They are businesses at the end of the day that created deeply flawed platforms that now my deep why is that I want women to be so full of themselves and full of their own agency that they know how to approach their dating lives from a place of, I trust myself, I've got this no matter what. And that informs every decision that they make in their lives and in their dating lives specifically. So I love that we've pivoted away from trying to control something that is deeply completely out of our control, which is the dating industry, which is again, a flawed place. Mm-hmm. And the focus is now fully on how can you lean into your own power and how can you change your own life with these tools that I've picked up along my journey.
That's wow. Oh my gosh. Like what a beautiful arc. I would pick the end of that story rather than the beginning for sure.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's the ABC, right? Like we're in a movie and we're just getting to the end of the movie where we all feel amazing. She's gonna make it after all.
Yes. Oh my God. So let's get into some episodes and some themes. Yeah.
Yeah. Guide me, Jeanette. Guide me.
We're reinventing this. This is my first time interviewing someone who does what I do. So it's a little meta, you know what I mean? It's like, we're just feeling it out. We're figuring it out as we go. But I thought it'd be fun to sort of talk about, as much as I want to talk to you about Date Brazen and your company, I'm going to kind of resist my instincts and really kind of talk about and highlight your podcast. So,
okay.
But they're conjunctional.
Yeah. It's always a both and, right? It's always a both and. Like my business and my podcast are inextricably linked. My program, the Brazen Breakthrough, and the podcast are inextricably linked, so it's all good.
Cool. So, like I said, one of my favorite things, and this is sort of circling back to something you already touched on, but is that you advocate that women are the best matchmakers for themselves, which I wholeheartedly agree in, but more specifically that dating is an act of self-care. So I wanted to talk to you more about the concept of, and I love this phrasing or this ideology of protecting your heart time.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, sort of backing up for a second, it's important to make the distinction between self-soothing and self-care. And I think that this is not my original concept. I don't remember where I got it, but I want to say that like self-soothing is when you're in a place and you need soothing. It is the bubble bath. It is the face mask. It is the turn your computer off and just like feel good in this moment.
It's the brownies I just bought myself because some guy told me that he was dating someone else and didn't want to meet me anymore.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, those brownies were good. Do not feel bad.
No, I think the brownies are good. I hate that happened to you. And I also think like self-care gets to be taking care of your future self, right? Going on the walk outside, even if you don't want to. Like yesterday, it was like, I know that I'll feel better after 10 minutes of yoga. I know I'll feel better. So I'm going to do it even though everything in my body is screaming like, no, don't want to get up off the couch. Right? That was not self-soothing in the moment. It was self-care. And so self-care gets to also be caring for your future self in the way that like, okay, if you desire something, if you desire a partnership that is deeply fulfilling and equal and soul quenching and supportive and fun and joyful and frothy and whatever you want, like a way to take care of your future self, because you have that desire now, a way to take care of your future self is to figure out how to date on your own terms, how to date as an act of self-care. So it's levels, right? It's like, how do I create a dating life that feels good in this moment, that is on my terms? And then how do I also, keep my bigger desire in mind and honor my desire for more with empowered, aligned action taking? So an example of empowered, aligned action taking to honor your desire for more is to honor your heart time. So I define heart time as anytime you're thinking, talking, doing, dating. because dating, as I mentioned earlier, is a microcosm of every hope, joy, dream, fear, insecurity, desire that we have. It's complicated. It's inherently vulnerable. It's inherently risky. It requires an immense amount of energy to put yourself out there. And a lot of time, many times, why we see so much burnout in dating, people aren't paying attention to their nervous system as they are dating. And so they brush past or push past cognitive overload. Right? When your brain's higher functioning shuts down because you have too many options or too many triggers. And then you make choices that are less aligned with your deeper power because you're in cognitive overload. Your higher functioning is shut down. Your literal higher functioning in your brain is shut down because you are not allowing yourself to rest. And so honoring your heart time can look like a lot of things. Mostly it looks like boundaries. It looks like only swiping for 20 minutes a day if you are swiping, because your brain, and that gets to be plus or minus however much, because everybody's brain is very different. It can look like asking for exactly what you want on a date. It can look like leaving a date when you're not feeling it. It can look like choosing to honor your time so you go on a virtual date before every first in-person date. It looks like basically honoring your heart time is creating a dating life on your own terms, full of juicy boundaries. That also applies to how you talk about your dating life. So many single people that I come into contact with and work with are stuck in a negative conversation about their dating lives.
Yeah.
And I think that it's important for people to vent, right? It's important for you to feel your feelings. It's important for you to recognize what sucks about this present moment and verbalize it. Like, don't hold it back. Both. Right. And the issue comes in when you're in a constant negative feedback loop, right? I think negative thoughts about what is possible in my dating life. I say negative things about what's possible. I complain with my friends ad nauseum. Then I continue to attract experiences that it's confirmation bias.
Right.
If you're looking for something to confirm that your dating life sucks, it's all hopeless, nothing is going to ever get better, then you got to find evidence to support that. So protecting your heart time also looks like, how can you indulge in a little more neutrality? Or even positivity when that feels accessible and true for you? So not toxic positivity, like forcing yourself to think positively or any sort of thing like that. Like, how can you maybe even come to a neutral place where, like, instead of my dating life is a dumpster fire, what about I have a dating life, right? Like, go up the ladder.
Judgment around that, right?
Right.
Exactly.
Just like, and what if that was true? I have a dating life. What is true about me? I make change happen in my career. I can make change happen in my love life, right? Like, there are so many ways to bring your brain into a more hospitable space in your dating life. Because, like, I would say 80% of what I do with my clients is working on their thoughts about their dating lives, and then also processing the feelings associated with the thoughts so that your body can process and move through some of the hard stuff. So all of this is protecting your heart time like it really matters.
It's so beautiful and it's so necessary. And I don't think people really understand how important it is. I was actually thinking of you. Well, you've been in my head all weekend because I've been listening to your episodes. And this isn't the exact interpretation of what you were talking about, but you popped into my head yesterday and I just want to share it with you. It's been a great January. The second guy that I had gone on 2 dates with him and was trying to schedule a third date with him, he canceled once. He ghosted/disappeared twice. And on the third one, he canceled because someone he knew had tested positive for COVID. So while it was valid, I was feeling very frustrated and I could feel my walls coming up. And I didn't know what to do because I was like, everything about me is saying, like, no, this person doesn't respect your time. But at the same time, like, I was like, I have no other leads right now. I'm not talking to anybody. I don't have any other dates. That other guy, that happened. And so when I was thinking about protecting my heart time, it was really about the emotional energy of setting up a date, having an expectation there will be a date, getting let down that the date didn't happen. And that is, as small as it sounds, especially because so little is happening in our world right now, that is more exhausting than people think it is. The expectation and the letdown and the expectation and the letdown. And then what happens is you start thinking, because I thought this on Sunday, it's going to be canceled because you have an expectation that it's going to be canceled. So I was like, all of this is no bueno. for my little tender, soft heart. And even though I would like to see this person again, this is not working for me. Yeah. So it's not a literal interpretation of what you're talking about, heart time. But I just want to say that, like, I don't know, somehow you just came to me in this divine moment and you helped me find the right answer for how to deal with that situation.
Oh, Jeanette, I'm so glad to hear you say that resonated. I think that is a literal definition of like heart time, because it gets to be whatever resonates with you. Like, that is the definition of heart time. Yeah. And I remember, if I may share a story, when I sort of came up with this concept of heart time, I was sort of a late bloomer is a negative framing. I didn't have sex until my mid-20s. I didn't have really many romantic partners at all before then, and I felt behind, like perpetually behind. And I grew up in a context where I was like waiting for marriage, right? So, and I no longer prescribed to that belief system. And I was like, well, how do I do this? Like, this was pre any sort of brazen concepts or anything like that. I was just sort of swiping on Bumble. I'm like, I don't really know what I'm looking for. I guess I had a checklist in my head. I find a guy, he speaks French. I spoke French at the time. He's a world traveler, works for an international development organization. I used to come from that world. I was like, oh my God, how cool. Had a beard. Check. Okay. So I go on a date with him, and this is going to get explicit really quickly. Okay.
I love juicy, so get in there.
Okay. And I hope my parents don't listen, but if they do, God bless.
If they found somehow the hashtag Single Podcast,
honestly, Jeanette, they comment on every goddamn thing that I post. They see everything. And I'm so glad that they support me. It's also like, Mom, this wasn't for you. You know what I'm saying?
At this Mom, earmuffs for the next story, please.
Right. So, okay. I go on this date with this guy. I'm attracted to him. He offers to go home with me. It was like a 4 p.m. date I had to babysit after. And he offers to like take me home immediately right then. And it was light outside.
Like a little afternoon fuck?
Yes.
Okay.
And I had not had sex at this point yet. And I was like, I don't think that this is like my day that I will have sex.
Did he know you were a virgin?
I don't think at that point.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if he was like, he thought he was doing you some kind of favor or something.
Oh my God. Well, that also happened to me before. The like last night that I lived in San Francisco, I got propositioned by a guy that I had hooked up with before. Anyway, so we are moving on. There are so many stories. And okay, so I say no, and we like kiss passionately, but it was kind of like forced and like very sort of like, oh, he's a very strong kiss, whatever. Okay, so I go to my babysitting gig. We continue to chat. He reveals in the text thread that we have now engaged in that he is a dom and that he is looking to have sex with somebody who's willing to be submissive. Mm-hmm. And I am very excited by that. I'm like, oh my God, I'm talking to a man about sex. Do you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
And I'm like turned on. I'm confused by this. So then my type A self goes on a couple days binge of learning about dom sub relationships, sexual relationships. I create my whole deal breakers list. I create my whole like, I know. I go deep,
you
and I'm
bought
like,
in, man. I love it.
Maybe I'm gonna actually do this. Like, oh my God, like, And I think it's a both and of this was very exciting for me as somebody who is sort of entering into her sexuality, and I also was like, who else is gonna want to have sex with me? Right? It was based in this scarcity, like, let me figure out how to make this work because this is my only option. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And at this point, he did know that I had not had sex yet. I told him, he said some bullshit about like, I think this would be good for you, and, so then he ghosts me. Okay.
Perfect.
After we have been talking about hooking up and getting together. Okay. Yes. Very Manhattan life. I have nothing else on the table. And I was obsessively thinking about this person, this situation, my choices. What did I do wrong to have him ghost me?
Oh.
And then I go to at the time I was going to a ballet class on the Upper East Side. I did not have much money at all. I spent my pennies on a ballet class because I love to dance. I was in a ballet class with women in their 50s, 60s, 70s.
Love it.
It was like 5 of us. And I remember being in this dance class and watching my body do these ballet moves and thinking like, Lily, you are so precious. Like, Lily, you are so precious and so beautiful, and what you want really matters. And it's okay to want what you want. And in that moment, I think the idea of heart time was born, right? This idea of like, I get to want what I want. I get to respect what I want. I don't have to push myself in any way to do anything that feels out of alignment for any reason.
Yeah.
And then like a couple days later, he texted me, he was like, oh, sorry, I was like out of town. And this is weeks later, do you want to get dinner? And I was like, no, no, I'm fully now at a place where I'm like, no, thank you. So I hope that I've never told that story before in any context or podcast episode. And so I feel a little vulnerable sharing. And I love this idea of heart time and that it can allow women to take up more space.
Oh, well, thank you for your vulnerability, first of all. Second of all, I love that we got the exclusive. That makes me feel really good. And I think a lot of people, myself included, can resonate with that story, different aspects of it. But I also just want to point out, I love that 2 of your most profound ideas came from a dance class.
Yes.
When you were, because I think you talk about this a couple times, like moving your body and bringing your body joy. And I think honestly, Lily, there's so much overlap with some of the things you talk about in your coaching and the topics that come up in conversation with artists, such as protecting your heart time and dealing with rejection and the internal work of getting your head in the right space so that the thing that you want doesn't, as you say, become soul sucking. And that's very much like, that's also on the table, this idea of like your mind. I really believe, especially women's bodies, they have intuition and they know. And if we can get out of our own fucking way and get out of our own head and you can listen and tap into your body will tell you. And that might sound a little woo-woo for people who are maybe not artists. But as we come into, I think, a new generation of people who are meditating more and are open to more teachings and spiritualities and trying to find happiness in this really challenging virtual society that we live in, it's not artisty and woo-woo. It's 100% necessary for us to survive.
Yeah. Well, and I echo times 2. And I also want to say for people who, I love the work of Coach Simone Soul. She does this podcast and program called Joyful Marketing that I'm a part of. And she talks about how the phrase woo-woo, like she was like, I'm no longer going to use the phrase woo-woo to describe anything that I teach, because my teaching, it's sort of like this idea of the spiritual is completely valid,
Right.
Like this idea of like,
it's such a judgment. You're right. It's
well,
like,
and no judgment to anybody. I've said it a billion times. You know what I'm saying? I think that the idea that our body's intuition is in any way not a fact. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right, but that's what I'm saying. Like, we shouldn't have to belittle it or say like it's like sort of like a caveat. Like, this is about to be weird, so if you don't subscribe to it, it's okay. Or please forgive me because I'm going to say something that's out there. Like, fuck that. It's another way that I think women apologize before actually saying something that might be a little different.
Yeah, for sure. And think about our nervous systems and how much we don't know about our own brain, right? Like our nervous systems pick up on the micro muscle movements. Our eyes pick up on the micro muscle movements in people's faces. And we without thinking about it cognitively, like our bodies interpret what somebody else's experience is. Obviously, this is assuming this may not apply to people who are neurodivergent or, everybody has different ways of interpreting other people and intuiting what they need and what they want, right? And we are so intelligent. And I think that people don't give themselves enough credit for how deeply they can change their own lives and change. Like, if you don't like where you're at, this is a playground. We live in a literal playground where we can make decisions and like change things and shift things. And like you are so much more powerful than you know, if that resonated with you.
Hell yes. Hell yes. One of my kind of most favorite episodes, it's episode 66, and you introduce the topic of ROI. So I really want to get into this with you.
Yes.
Because, in recent years, I've been working hard to eliminate the idea of success. I put that in air quotes, which I think in our patriarchal society can be very prescriptive and very linear and quite honestly, very bullshit. I want to play a clip, if I may.
Oh my God. I'm shook. On it. Okay, great.
So let me pull this up. We'll give it a go.
Cool.
Why not? Do something new for 22. Okay, so so I'm going to play this little clip and would just love to hear your thoughts on it.
Okay.
So when my client came to our one-on-one session, she was like, I just am very frustrated at the dating ROI, the return on investment, because I'm spending 20 minutes a day swiping and messaging, and I'm not getting into juicy conversations yet. And this is after maybe 3 weeks of being on the dating app. And then she said this client has become so good at reframing in the moment. Then she said something magical. She was like, oh, yeah, actually, if I define dating ROI as meeting my person right now, yeah, I'm not getting a return on my investment. However, if I view my dating return on investment if I look at what is my return on investment in knowing my deeper preferences on an intimate level, that is working. What is my ROI on being able to bless and release easily without making it mean something about me or my dating future? That's working. And when she was able to redefine her dating ROI, she was suddenly able to see the progress that she was making and see what she was in control of. And that led to her feeling lighter. That led to her feeling more like I got this. That led to her, knowing that her efforts were not in vain, that, dating doesn't have to feel like a constant soul suck. It can be a celebration of the work that you've done to arrive to knowing yourself more deeply and being able to set boundaries like a fucking boss in the process. So that's what I want to ask you today in this quickie episode. I want to ask you, how are you currently defining your dating return on investment? And how are you going to redefine that or reframe that to exist in a space that is more loving towards yourself and more aware of what you can actually control?
Jeanette, let's just leave it at there. I'm so grateful to be on the podcast, and thanks so much for having me.
Let's get into it.
Okay, great. What are your thoughts? I want to hear your thoughts first.
Well, like I said, I think I love the idea of reframing success, and this is something that I'm actively working on. It's not like a 2022 goal or what nonsense, but I'm really in the last 2 years, very pandemic based, but I'm trying to reframe my brain away from the linear structure of or the linear ladder of what it means to succeed, both in my career and my life, and realizing that what we were taught, as in like the A, B, C, D, E, F, G structure of what life is meant to be and what life should look like, not just for women, but very much for women, but as an artist as well. Because not every job leads to the next job, and not every job is bigger than the last one. I have a really wonderful coach that I've worked with for many years named Liz Kimball. And she believes that life, that careers, especially with women, is cyclical because our lives are cyclical. They're all built around 28 days, and they're built around the moon. So how can you be in a straight line when everything about our lives is circular, if that makes sense to you?
Yeah, very much so.
So this reframe, and then this episode came up where I was like, yes, let's redefine success. What is success? Is success landing the person, the partner that you want to be with?
Yeah.
How can that be your definition of success if that is something that you literally cannot control?
Yep. Okay, so thank you, first of all, for listening to the podcast. And sharing that clip. That's so fun. And honestly, I record so many of these podcasts that I forget what I said 4 months ago. And so it's like, oh, cool. I am smart.
Yeah.
It's like, so, okay. Here's the deal. Okay. So we heard about, okay, let's redefine ROI, return on investment of our time, of our money, if you invest in your dating life or your time in your dating life. I think, Jeanette, if I can use you as an example, because I always like to work with the I, like speaking from the I. And if there's another person in the room, I want to speak to her.
No,
right?
I'm here for you. Take me.
Okay. So can I coach you a little bit?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, cool. So when you think about, tell me what is the previous like version of success that was driving you mad?
As a single person, like in my single life?
Yeah, in your dating life, yeah.
I think it's very results driven. I'm seeking a companion. I would like a partnership. I don't have to define it by saying I'd like to get married. If that happens, that would be great, but I'm not saying that's how I define the end game, but I am seeking a long-term partnership or companion.
Yeah.
And I've been single for 10 years, as anyone who listens to the podcast knows. I've not gotten remotely close to the thing that I desire. And so I feel like I've had to let go of that as the it's not that I let go of that as the desire, but I let go of that as the goal. Because if I don't ever get the thing that I want, my happiness can't be entwined in that. You know?
For sure. And in this coaching moment that you've consented to, I want to get in the weeds of that both, and I do want to sort of reflect back what I heard, which is this idea of, you said, I have not gotten remotely close to what I want.
Yes.
How does that thought make you feel?
Well, it's awful.
Yeah.
It's exhausting. I was just talking about this with a friend because, and I think a lot of people experience this, but this hamster wheel.
Right.
Of like getting, have 3 dates. That didn't work out. We start again. Oh, this conversation feels like it's going somewhere. Oh, okay, we're not going to meet up. Let's start again. So you're constantly, like I said, in this hamster wheel of starting and ending and starting and ending and starting and ending. And that can feel pointless. Honestly,
exhausting,
you're sort of like, where is this fucking going? Are we just going to spin in circles for another decade?
Right.
Well,
it is interesting, this idea of spinning in circles for another decade, both, and this idea of everything being cyclical.
Ooh, I know. I was thinking that too. I was like, wow, life is circular.
That these two thoughts have very different feelings, right? When you said, my coach says that time is circular and that, there are 28 days and nothing is linear. And that felt, the feeling that I heard beneath that thought was one of peace. I heard peace. I heard like hope. I heard like greater trust in yourself, maybe. And then underneath the am I going to be in the circle of hell forever of trying and not working? That feeling I heard you shared, it was like exhausting. Like,
oh, interesting. Yeah.
And those two sentences that you said are both thoughts.
Yeah. And they're both at odds with each other a little bit. I see what you're saying.
Well, none of us have very clear minds that think like that. The expectation.
Oh, you're saying thoughts versus feelings.
I'm saying thoughts are interpretations of the world around us based on how you've learned to survive.
Yeah.
And the idea that we should have positive thoughts about everything is in and of itself a fixed mindset, linear concept, right?
Yeah.
So this idea that of course you're going to shift your dating ROI, you're going to shift your thoughts about your dating life because that's just it's a piece that's evolving right now. Your thoughts about your career, maybe you've done a lot of work about the idea of my career is flowy and it's not a straight line. And maybe now the invitation is what? Okay, so words are wands. I believe that words are magic wands and that our words really matter. The ones that we say out loud really matter. So when you say, I have not come remotely close to what I want, if we're not in control of the timing, I get that you've been single for 10 years and there are probably a lot of feelings that are wrapped up in that. And by the way, if you don't resonate with something I say, please tell me. Because
no, you're in there. You're good.
So
I'm with you.
So when you say if we're not in control of the timing, if you say I have not been remotely close to what I want, you are making that's a thought.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That is an interpretation of the circumstance, which is I'm single.
Right.
Because you actually, by saying I've not been remotely close, I think that you might believe that to be true. That might not be true, Jeanette.
Interesting.
What if it was not? How does it make you feel? The thought, like, okay, backing up. So this is the work of Brooke Castillo and Carl Lowenthal, all these coaches that do thought work. So this idea that our thoughts are emotional interpretations of the world around us based on our past rejection, past trauma, and that those thoughts inspire feelings, the feeling is always valid. So if we're talking about redefining the ROI, I think it's important first to look at your thoughts about, quote, success. Look at the thoughts, take inventory, and then notice how what's the feeling is in your body. So backing up a little bit, I know I'm a little bit all over where this is some complex shit we're talking about. So if we look at just the feeling in your body that thought produces, that, you know, it's not here, it hasn't been here, I'm not remotely close. How would you describe that one word sensation in your body?
Let's see. My body. I would say it's a closed off feeling.
Mm-hmm. Where is that in your body?
Definitely central, around the heart, lungs-ish area.
Yeah. So if you took a breath into that feeling, what else do you notice about that feeling?
I feel like there's resistance there for sure. But as I understand, and I'm sure you do too, I'm always paying attention to where the resistance is, because those are lessons. Like you're like, oh, why is that uncomfortable? Why is there a disconnect there? Yeah. You know, like maybe that's the stuff that needs a little more attention and some love this year.
Yeah. One more question about that feeling in your chest. Does it have a shape or a color?
It didn't when I thought of it. I don't want to prescribe something that wasn't just to put it there. Yeah. So I'll say no. Yeah.
So what this is, is processing, the thoughts that you're having are emotional interpretations. The feelings are always valid. And when people try to force themselves, when I previously have tried to force myself into a new thought, I describe that as toxic positivity, this idea of I define my own success. I am successful, without first processing the feeling associated with the original thought.
Ooh, yeah.
Then I get nowhere.
Yes. Yeah.
The new thoughts, the new ROI can come when I take care of my body when she's feeling hard feelings, by practicing self-compassion, saying, oh, wow, I'm feeling this really tightness and anxiety in my chest. I love the thought, and saying it out loud. I'm willing to feel anything to be with you. Saying that out loud to myself. Yeah. Because the feelings of disappointment, it hasn't happened yet. This thing that I want hasn't arrived yet. The feelings of discouragement, the feelings of anxiety, the feelings of, those are all valid, and you get to feel your way through them. They're not facts. They're not going to consume you. I think that people get stuck in a vicious cycle of toxic positivity, or a seesaw, I like to call it, of I want to find my partner. No, my success is in how I feel in my dating life. Seesaw, back and forth, back and forth. The way that you can get off of that seesaw into sort of a new orientation, I call it sort of just shifting a little bit to the right? We're not going to change. We're just going to shift your perspective a little bit by getting off the seesaw, by processing the feelings in your body associated with the, quote, negative thought of it hasn't happened yet. Process that feeling, honor your body, allow that feeling to flow and pass. And then you can ask yourself, what else might be true? What else might be true? Might it be true that I am in charge of my life, that I am in the driver's seat of my thoughts, that I get to measure success in how bold I am in asking for what I want, that I get to be courageous, and I find that actually extremely valuable and legacy breaking? You know how many women in my family didn't get to ask for what they wanted because of the patriarchy, because of economic inequality? You know how legacy breaking this work of so that can be my success. But you can only, I think authentically, I can only get there when I've allowed myself to process process the original, like, deep feelings of hurt and pain that might be associated with that original interpretation.
Yeah. Damn, Lily. You're just like spitting wisdom right and left. I'm like in a trance over here.
Oh my God.
I'm like taking notes. No, this is wonderful. This is beautiful work. It's really transcendental because I think also I brought you on as a podcast guest, but honestly, we haven't talked about this work from a mindset perspective or a mindset shift. We've talked about mindset shift, but your approach is unique and touches on a lot of different facets and different ideologies and coachings from other coaches, which I think is phenomenal. And I think a lot of people will get a lot out of this episode just in the few questions that we've addressed, or the few episodes or concepts we've addressed. And I hope that they will. I hope if you're listening, you are enjoying this as much as I am. I'm like, I think I want to be coached by Lily.
Oh my God. Would love, Jeanette, for you to join that. I would be honored to have you join the Brazen Breakthrough. It is such a wonderful room full of badass women from around the world who are saying to themselves, like, they're willing to admit, like, yeah, fuck yeah, I'm whole right now without a relationship, both, and I get to honor with what I desire with empowered action.
That's so like, oh God, that's just me in a nice bow.
There you go. And I think if anybody takes anything from this conversation in this episode, I hope that they take that their ability to feel how they want to feel, which is hopefully free and empowered and self-trust filled, that ability to feel that way is directly linked to how you hold yourself in compassion when you do feel complicated feelings, how you allow yourself, how when you say, like, I'm willing to feel any feeling to be with you, saying that to yourself can completely change your life. And then from that place, we can create a tactical action plan so you can be your own matchmaker. And it starts with, how do you allow yourself to be the queen of your domain, and how you take care of yourself first, and then let that flow into action taking that is aligned and courageous and attracts more.
Gorgeous. One quick takeaway. I want to finalize, but I want to get some more information on how people can work with you if they're interested. But just to wrap up, I want to hear from you, Lily, you personally, your heart. What is like a favorite moment or episode or guest or something that has brought you meaning and joy in doing the podcast for yourself?
Yeah, so 2. Episode 69 with Simone Soul. I mentioned her earlier. She is one of my most powerful mentors, I feel. And so she came on the podcast to talk about her concept of winning results versus goals. So I think that I think it's so related to what we're talking about. That was one of my favorite podcasts. And I also felt really honored to bring her on because I like being coached by her is such an honor. And so having her on was a thrill. And I think that episode is also about processing feelings of shame, which is so important to dating. And then secondly, another episode that changed my life, I love it so much, is my episode with Stephanie, episode 75. She is a past client of mine. And she came into work with me after experiencing such a hard, soul-sucking relationship in which she didn't feel she got to ask for what she needed. She was minimizing her needs. And so that podcast episode was all about her journey really to owning what she wanted without the fear that it didn't exist, and how to do that, and how to really ask for more, and fundamentally learn how to ask for more in every facet of her life. So that's a really good episode too.
Phenomenal. Lily, you're so great. And I'm so glad that we finally reached across the internet aisle and got to meet each other as human beings.
Yes, so nice to meet you. You're doing such great work. And I know that every episode you help people feel less alone. And so I just want to commend you for the work that you're putting out there.
Thank you. And you as well. So tell people if you're interested in working with Lily, obviously highly, highly recommend. I'm considering it myself. Tell people how they can find you and how they can work with you.
Amazing. So obviously the Date Brazen podcast is where all of the gorgeous, gorgeous girls hang out, gorgeous humans. And also I have this guide to make dating feel like self-care. If people want to get on my email list and want this free journal, basically, that I've created with 3 pillars of creating a dating life that feels like self-care, I can provide that link. And then we can hang out every single week. And the Brazen Breakthrough is my coaching program that I run quarterly. And it is such a party. We move through in 4 months. We have weekly group coaching. We illuminate your deeper essence-based preferences, your patterns of thought. We create new thoughts that allow you to own your worthiness and own your power. Then in month 2, we move into building a tactical strategy based on the reflective work that you've done. Everything flows from your deeper essence-based preferences, so you feel in the driver's seat every step of the way. Month 3, you begin to actively date with the community. You start trusting your intuition. Month 4, you're dating with all of these incredible women. You say things like, I can't believe how excited I am to go on this date. I can't believe how easily I blessed and released that person. I can't believe how little mind drama I have about this whole dating thing. I can't believe how easily I just asked for that raise, right? So it's like all of the juiciness that we've been talking about times 10 in the Brazen Breakthrough. And you can get on the wait list for the Brazen Breakthrough at datebrazen.com.
Killer. Oh my gosh. So much juicy info. I can't wait. Yes, please send me that that guide. I'll be happy to link that for you guys in the episode description. And you know where to find Lily. So I hope you connect with her, and I hope you find some of her teachings as positive and reinforcing and encouraging and valuable as I have in this last hour. Thank you so much for joining us today. As always, guys, if you found this episode helpful and you have a single pal that could really use some positivity in their life and some profound wisdom, as Lily has shared with us, please consider sharing it with them. And if you liked it, please consider subscribing on whatever platform you're listening right now. And if you're feeling very bold, go ahead and give us a nice, beautiful 5-star review. Come and join us in the conversation over on Instagram at #singlepod. That's it for this episode, and we will catch you next time.